Hello and welcome to this API Builder introduction. In this presentation, we'll be acting as the role of an API specialist. Today we'll learn two main things. First, we'll learn how to install API Builder, and second, we'll create a project and show you around the console and the folder we created. The only prerequisites are to have npm installed. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and install API Builder. So here in our terminal, we'll do a global install of xway/API Builder. And now the CLI is installed. Now that we have the API Builder CLI installed, we'll go ahead and create your first project. So here we'll use the CLI, we'll do API Builder init, and we'll call this Apurva's project. Create the project. Now we'll go ahead and inside the project and install the dependencies with npm install -no optional. The project gets created and all we have to do to start it is npm start, and within a couple seconds the project starts up. So now we'll take a look at the project you just created. So here we'll go ahead and visit the console, and this is how you access the web UI for the project. This is the summary page, has some summary info. They have the API page, which has a list of all the APIs that are in the project. We have models, which is how you access the models that are brought in from the file system or from a data connector. Configuration, which has all the configuration files for the project. And lastly, credentials, which shows all the credentials needed to connect to different services. So we'll go back to the API page here and we'll look at the greeting API that comes with all projects. And we'll go ahead and expand this API here, and we can look at some of the properties and the parameters used for that API. You can see it's a GET request, and you can see that we can even test the API here right in the view, and we have examples of different ways to use the API. So here I'll put in a name and I'll execute it, and you can see the response come back. So this API returns howdy and then the name. Now we can go and look at the flow here, and the flow is basically the logic used to invoke this API. So now we'll go ahead and drop to the file system to take a look at some of the files that are involved in an API Builder project. So here we are back at the terminal, and you can see some of the execution logs. Now if we just do a command to view all the files that are in the project, you can see we have an APIs directory which contains some of the API files for the project. We have an app.js file which contains, this is where your project starts. We have a blocks folder which contains certain JavaScript files for running before and after APIs. We have the conf folder which contains your configuration files. We have the endpoints folder which contains the endpoints which are responsible for invoking your flows, which we looked at earlier. We have the flows, which are those graphs that we saw that dictate the logic for an endpoint. We have the models directory, which is where you can define models for the project. And then we have your package files, which is just normal npm package files. We have schemas, which is where you can define certain JSON schema specs that can be used throughout the project. We have a Swagger directory, and the Swagger directory is used to drop in Swagger specs for certain external services. An API Builder can dynamically utilize those services in a flow, which is really nice. And then we have a test folder where you can write unit tests for your service. And we have a web folder where you can add in different web files, such as HTML files or images. Congratulations, at this point you should have now been able to install API Builder and create your first project.